Hello, everyone, or whoever's here yet. Welcome to the channel. Thank you for coming back to the channel. Thought I'd jump on for a little live stream to discuss all the madness that is, and let's face it, isn't happening at Tottenham Hotspur in terms of the transfer window at the moment. Also interested to see how well 7:30 p.m. does on a Wednesday night for a live Tottenham transfer-based stream. I'm going to crack open a beer and talk through, debate with you guys the kind of nothingness that's happening at the moment. Basically, all the players that Tottenham are interested in and have been on Tottenham's list for a long time, like Eze, going elsewhere. So what a time to be alive for Tottenham fans. And let's face it, Tottenham fans are going absolutely ballistic about it. I feel like it would be a dream for Martin Redwood to have his comment up on the stream. He's a good friend of mine, Martin. Home cinema supplier to the Stars. If you need a home cinema, make sure you go to Martin Redwood. Likes to make jokes about the fact that I often say concurrently. It's a good one. Thank you for watching, Woody. And Daniel Keppel Music says, hey, Barnaby. Hey, Daniel, what have you got? Any questions? Send them in, guys. But yeah, really just thought I'd jump on because so many people in the Spurs community, fan base community, are just absolutely losing their minds over the lack of transfer activity at White Hart Lane at the moment. And as I think I said in my video this morning, last Friday I did a live stream at lunchtime and I talked about how we're going to need to be patient. But I admit the patience is wearing thin, even for me. And I was listening to the Extra Inch, brilliant podcast, and Windy on it was saying that he had come from a place of, be patient, let Thomas Frank see his players, kind of similar to where I was. And yet, as you continually see, seemingly all of your opponents getting their deals done or getting their ducks in a row to get their deals done, I can see why the Tottenham fan base are getting more and more annoyed. I guess the question is, as I ask in the title, are we in a massive transfer crisis, or is this just the reality of having a new manager and that new manager not having trained any of his players and worked it out yet? There is also, of course, the possibility that this week, because as I mentioned this morning, the non-international players are due back to training on Saturday for the first time. And then some of the international players will be back next week. Ali Gold was suggesting that he thought that Thomas Frank was probably having conversations with a lot of the players this week, maybe before they've even come in the building, or certainly at the weekend when they start to come into the building. And those kind of conversations are, where do you see yourself in terms of Spurs? Do you want to stay at Spurs? Where do you think we can improve? How involved do you want to be? And Thomas Frank will want to get an idea of how committed those players are and how motivated they are to play for him, especially when, in reality, Thomas Frank doesn't know whether they're going to want to play for him. They obviously all had a great bond with Ange Postecoglou, and so he's probably waiting for some of that. But let's get into the comments. Scribble Scrabble says, I've seen mixed comments from Spurs fans. Are we not panicking too early? Does Frank not need to assess our guys first, or is that our targets? Or is it that our targets are getting snapped up while we wait? Yeah, I mean, I think that's, they're all the questions I've been asking, and I agree, Scribble. But I think it is that element of seeing those players who are supposedly on Tottenham's list getting closer and closer, if not already moving to other clubs. And I think it's the Eze one that's really sent people over the edge, because Eze is someone we've been chasing. I mean, we've basically been chasing him since about 2020. Back when he was at QPR, and we let him go to Crystal Palace. We didn't make the move then, and then we wanted him last summer. We didn't make the move then, and I think we all thought he's a Tottenham player and the kind of player that, when you've been chasing him for that long and working on him for that long, it'll probably happen this summer. But again, as I mentioned a few times, Crystal Palace are in a bit of a weird situation. They've won the FA Cup, so they should be in the Europa League, but because of dual ownership, they're waiting to find out from UEFA whether they're allowed in the Europa League. And that will undoubtedly affect the realities of who they're going to let leave the club. Mark Gay has 1 year left on his deal. Liverpool want him. He wants to go to Liverpool. And so that seems like a very obvious move. And maybe it's the fact that Crystal Palace, if they lose Gueye this summer, they won't want to lose Eze this summer as well, going into potentially a Europa League season. So it's also possible that, of course, all these rumours of Arsenal getting closer and closer to him aren't necessarily true too. Jiggy TV Newman says, hi to Barnaby and all. Why can't we just for once go get top players? 49 years I've seen this go on. Well, if you've been a fan for 49 years, Jiggy, and sorry, I took that off, I shouldn't have done. If you've been a fan for 49 years, then you'll remember when we got Paul Gascoigne for a British record transfer fee in 1988. So it hasn't always been like this. Remember then, under Venables, we got Gary Lineker as well. And of course, you'll remember when we got Rafa van der Vaart, and then we got incredible young players like Luka Modric, Dimitar Berbatov. So we've bought top players over the last 30 years, but this seems like a very specific period of time right now where, as ever, the fan base, we all want Spurs to get some deals done early. I'm sure Thomas Frank would rather have players in for the beginning of pre-season. That's one of the big benefits of joining a new club in the summer rather than in the middle of the season. But also, yeah, it's a bit of a weird situation where he obviously needs to meet the players he's got and work out how it's going to work. Rene, thank you for your comment, Rene. Says, so first Kudus bid has been rejected. They're looking for £60 million. No. Challenge will be the salary. Do you know what Kudus is on at West Ham? Well, all of the rumours coming out about this deal with Mohamed Kudus at West Ham is that personal terms have basically been agreed with his people. And that wouldn't be a problem. João Pedro has today signed for Chelsea. So that's another forward that they bid for, although they've got, but they do want to get Christopher Nkunku out of the club. And if they manage to do that, then obviously there's a chance they'll go in for Kudus themselves. West Ham won't want to deal with Spurs for some reason. West Ham see Spurs as their biggest rivals. I've never really understood that. Whatever. I mean, probably not helped by the fact that back in the early noughties, we took Defoe, Carrick, Canute off them, to name but a few. So they won't want to deal with us, but I think they do need to sell. I think Potter wants to rebuild his squad, and I think if we come up with the money, then it'll probably happen. But you can probably also see why Daniel Levy, God forsake Daniel Levy, and I'm doing a video tomorrow morning about Daniel Levy and a Qatari bid for Tottenham that seems to have been that the Qataris seem to have walked away from because of the way that Daniel Levy dealt with them in negotiations. I'm going to do a video about that tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. But yeah, I think a lot of people get very frustrated about that. But Daniel Levy won't want to pay 60 million full whack up front for Mohamed Kudus when he'll say, well, that's what I paid for a striker in Richarlison or Dominic Solanke. And Kudus isn't a striker; he's a wide forward, and so the value on wide forwards is less than strikers in the Premier League. So that is probably the what's going around his head at the moment. But yes, I can understand why fans are always like, why can't we just pay the money up front straight away? But Daniel Levy will not. He's leopard doesn't change his spots. It's as simple as that. So let's see. Daniel Keppel says, I agree. We need to know what we have before we assume that we need to change. I mean, but there are undoubtedly some changes we need to make. We need more experience down the spine of our team. We've got some absolutely unbelievable young talent. We need to bring in some experienced talent alongside it. Not just experience for the sake of experience, but really good players who have been there and done it in the Premier League alongside them. That's why, for me, the opportunity to get a Semenyo or an Eze was so good. And now Semenyo has signed his new deal at Bournemouth. I'm sure there's I'm sure there's a release clause for that, but it probably won't be coming up until next summer. And Eze looks like he's going to the other team from South London. So very disappointing. Sad Cowboy says, hi guys, finally got here for a live. Thank you so much for your comment. Good stuff. Guys, if you're here for the first time and you're not a subscriber, please do subscribe to the channel. Do give this video a like on YouTube as well. And as you can see in the description box below, there's a link there. If you want to give me a nomination for a football content award, if you like my stuff, please do go in there and give me a nomination for one of those categories I've suggested down there. Sukil says Kudus bid rejected. Well, I heard that we had an initial £50 million bid rejected for Kudus as early as last week. So let's see. Oh, look at this bit of trolling here. Way too old to wear a top like that. You don't like this? You don't like this Spurs shirt? You don't like it? Deary me, a little bit of trolling there from Royce. Thank you for coming on to engage and troll me like that. Appreciate it. Dude says, be competitive on all fronts, they say. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, you know, and I don't think I'm breaking the mold by saying this, but when Daniel Levy said in that interview with Venkateshan, Vinay, when he said, oh, you know, we want to win the Champions League and the Premier League, not only did he say it in the moment, but he will have had full creative control over that interview and the edit, and he will have watched it before it went out, and it never crossed either of their minds, seemingly, that if you're going to say that in an interview that you're putting on the club's website and social media that's going directly to the fans, then the fans are going to immediately be like, well, the only way you're going to do that is by spending the kind of money that those teams around us are spending on wages and transfer fees. But for some reason, that didn't cross either Daniel Levy's or Vinay's or the social media team's minds when they were editing that video. And therein again, I think, lies another example of how Daniel Levy, absolutely amazing businessman, but sometimes just cannot see what is right in front of his face. Honestly, cannot see optically what is going to look terrible for him. And he's done it over and over again, sacking Martignol at halftime, furloughing the staff during lockdown, the Super League, you know, so many different things, sacking Mauricio Pochettino just a few months after getting to a Champions League final. And that is where Levy will never change. It's bizarre. It's bizarre that he said that. And then, you know, we're having this mad period of time where we're not spending any money and all those around us are. Just some news in the moment. Inter Milan and Juventus both interested in signing Harvey Elliott from Liverpool, who I know a lot of Spurs fans are interested in. Liverpool would demand a fee of around £50 million unless a buyback clause is included. So will Harvey Elliott go abroad? And if he does, I think he would be doing that in the hope of getting game time to maybe then go back to Liverpool. So let's see. The Norwegian Vikings are still angry we are not going for Eze. Typical Spurs and Levy would be the perfect match. Well, I don't think it is the case that Spurs are not or didn't go for Eze. I think they were in for Eze, probably talking to his people all the time. And then they heard that Arsenal have gone in for him, and his people have said to Tottenham, Arsenal are seriously in for Eberechi, and that's where we prefer to go. And at that point, Tottenham, you know, leaked to the press that they were never going for him anyway, which they do this every time, and it's just embarrassing. It's trying to save face, and it's too late. Excuse me, I'm just sharing a beer with you guys as I talk about this Tottenham lack of transfer activity. Sukil, thanks for your comments. Says 55 plus 5 add-ons should have been given, not 50 plus 5 million add-ons. Talking about Mohamed Kudus, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, look, who knows? I think the thing we just got to hope for that if we really are going all in on Kudus, and he's undoubtedly an exciting player, but he worries me in a little bit of a Tanguy and Ndombele type way. Like, he's a bit of a maverick. He's shown already at previous clubs that he can down tools when things aren't going for him, and that is a worry for me. But like I said earlier, I think Levy is probably reticent to pay £60 million up front when he paid that for Richarlison and Solanke, who are proper strikers who've scored, Premier League goals from the number 9 position. Marfin asks, how much longer will we be disappointed this transfer window? Well, like I said earlier, Thomas Frank getting some of the first load of his players back into the training ground on Saturday, and then more the week after. So you'd like to think the longest this could possibly go on is kind of 2-3 weeks. If we're here in 3 weeks' time and Spurs haven't bought anyone decent, what would that be? That would be basically, nearly the end of July, coming to the beginning of August. We've got the Super Cup on the 13th of August. So that would be when I think people would properly go mental. Well, Tane with a little bit of trolling here. Are you R34, R4 tarded? I don't think you can use that word anymore. But thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Appreciate your engagement. Gary Riddell says good morning from California, Barn. Yeah, morning, mate. Where in Cali are you, mate? Let me know. Let me know. Tane, you've asked the same question twice. I'm probably just going to ban you and delete your comments. Sorry, mate. Appreciate your engagement, but yeah, what's the point? Melton, thank you so much for your comments. As we can want who we like, but we won't pay the wages, so that's that. I think to some degree that's true, but I think with Eze and Kudus, I think we would pay the wages that they wanted. I think Eze and Kudus, Eze would probably want about 150 grand a week, and I think we would pay that. We were previously paying Kane 250, Lloris 200. I think Sonny's on 200. So for the right players, we do go up to 200 and more. I think Kudus would probably want 100 or 125, maybe 150 as well. He's probably on quite a good whack at West Ham, to be fair, because I think he joined West Ham for 38 million pounds. But I think we could afford Kudus. I'm like I said, a little reticent to go big on wages on a player like that, but I would love to be proven wrong. Keb, this is a good point. I heard Eze is an Arsenal fan, so not really a viable option. Yeah, so Eze actually, I don't know if he's an Arsenal fan. I think he was as a kid. And then he was on Arsenal's books. He was in their academy. I've seen a video that they made before the cup final for Match of the Day on this. And then Arsenal released him. And I watched him in this film talk about how devastated he was and hurt he was by Arsenal releasing them. And almost kind of alluded to the idea that he had been a fan of Arsenal, but couldn't be anymore because of that and because of what happened. So that's why I always thought, even if he was an Arsenal fan as a kid, maybe the idea of now playing for Spurs and kind of scoring goals against Arsenal would be something he'd be really up for. But unfortunately, it does look like now Arsenal have certainly jumped ahead of us. And as Scribble Scrabble says here, I'm gutted about Eze, I must say. And if he goes to Arsenal, exactly. I think we all feel like that. And here's Gary saying, yeah, according to all the big time reporters, we were never in for Eze. But like I said earlier, Gary, and thanks for your comment, I think that's Tottenham basically rowing back on that now that they've heard from Eze's people that he is only interested in going elsewhere. So, yeah, I think they do that all the time, Tottenham, and I find it a bit embarrassing, to be honest. Yeah. Steve Barrow says, let's face it, we just can't compete with the big boys who can always outbid us. Until we get Saudi input, things will never change. Yeah, that's the reality. I've been saying that all transfer window, really. If we're interested in players, we basically have to wait to be sure that none of those teams who pay more wages than us are interested in them first. So, that is Liverpool, Manchester City, Manchester United, Arsenal, possibly Newcastle, although I think Newcastle realistically is quite a hard sell a lot of the time because it's, so far up north and away from anything else. And then you can add in Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Real Madrid to all that as well. Maybe even Juventus. They've just bought Jonathan David over us. So only once they've kind of decided they're not interested in a player, can Tottenham then be like, okay, that's a player we can go for. And you talked about Saudi investment in the club. It's the Qataris who have been interested in investing in Tottenham. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which way you look at it, or whether you are interested in having a petrostate as the owners of your club, it looks like Daniel Levy has put the kibosh on that move. And I'll be doing a video that talks about that tomorrow morning. Dave Bird, thank you for your comment, mate. Says, let's do well in the league this season with the talent we've got. The next season, everyone will want to join us. Have faith in Thomas and our players. Come on, you Spurs. Yeah, listen, I don't disagree with that, but I think we do need some more experience to offset the talent we've got. Because let's not forget, we did finish 17th this year. And although I think a lot of that talent will, feel really good about the fact that they won a trophy, they will also have some scars in the Premier League, and the best way to get rid of those scars will be to have a good start to this season in the Prem. And if we don't, then it's going to be difficult for the fans, I think, to remain patient, especially if we slip down the table again. But thank you for your message. So Ren says, West Ham owners know there will be a fan backlash selling to us, so it makes sense for them to wait for anyone else, Chelsea, Newcastle, anyone but Spurs. That's a really good point, so Ren. And yes, although I've seen a lot of West Ham fans say they're kind of over it with Kudus because he really didn't play well last season after having a brilliant first season. And as a result, they just want to get the money for him and rebuild. So who knows? Let's see what happens. Rene says, PSR is broken. Spurs should just sell the stadium back to ENIC Top Company, like these ridiculous antics with Chelsea selling their hotel to their owners and now Aston Villa selling their women's team. Yeah, well, don't forget, Chelsea also sold their women's team to themselves. Yeah. I think the stadium is owned by ENIC already, so I don't know how exactly it works, but they'd have to set up another company and sell it to them, I guess. But ENIC don't spend money on Spurs. They don't put money into the club, so that wouldn't happen. ENIC wouldn't buy it off themselves because, it is owned by them, but it's really owned by the banks because of all the huge loans of like 1.2, 1.3 billion pounds that we're paying back at about 30 million pounds every year on a decent interest rate. Joe Luong says, what's the best chance for a cup this year, Barnaby? I would say the Super Cup. On the basis that we're in the final on the 13th of August, playing Paris Saint-Germain, who are still in the World Club Cup. The final of that is, I think, on like the 12th or 13th of July. So if they got to the final of that, which let's keep our fingers crossed they do, then Paris Saint-Germain would have to legally, by FIFA law, give all of their players 3 weeks off, which would mean they would only come back into pre-season training 1 week before that Super Cup final. Now, do I still think they'd probably beat us? Yes, and it would be pretty memeable for Spurs to have lost to a team who've basically been on the beach a week before. But I think realistically does give us our best chance of winning a trophy. After that, Joe, I'd say League Cup. Scribble, thank you for your comment again, says, I'm more worried if Romero goes now and we don't bring in big signings. I want QT as captain this season. Yeah, I do too. That if Sonny leaves, I want QT to be given the captaincy and given more responsibility and make him feel really the most important player at the club. I think he could be an amazing captain, QT. And I think he's one of those players that if he was given the armband, that maybe he would suddenly, you'd miraculously see that he didn't get injured nearly as much. And he'd really he'd make it his mission to do something really special at Spurs again. Daniel Keppel says, it's hard to move our players on if European teams can't pay because of their own financial difficulties. Spurs have struggled selling players in the last, certainly since Pochettino left. And a little bit before that as well. Since that kind of crop of players that we sold on, who came up through the academy, Andros Townsend, Stephen Colker, Jake Livermore, Josh Onoma, just thinking of some, of others. Carl Walker-Peters, we ended up getting a fee for. Since that kind of influx through the academy, we've really struggled to sell players on, and we've ended up having to give away a lot of players that we bought for a lot of money, and that has affected Spurs massively. The fact that European leagues don't earn nearly as much money in broadcasting rights means that it's hard for us to sell to European teams as well. And the best example of that is the Gio Lo Celso deal. And it's all gone quiet on that because, the kind of, the thing that Spurs fans were sold on as part of that deal, selling him to Real Betis, was that we got first dibs on Johnny Cardoso. And then Johnny Cardoso said, no, I don't want to go to Spurs, and joined Atletico Madrid. And what happens then? Do we get money from Real Betis? Not that I've heard. I'd love to hear from like Ali Gold or an insider from the club, or who has insider knowledge of the club. What happened to do that? Did we end up just giving Lo Celso away for free, which would basically mean that we would have given away Ndombele and Lo Celso. It's over £100 million worth of signings away for free. Really bad. Really bad. Now, thank you for your comments. Says, Spurs always make me feel embarrassed when it comes to transfers. That's how my kids at home always laugh at me and my club. I'm sorry that you feel so strongly about it, Now. I wouldn't go as far as to say I feel embarrassed, but also, why do your kids at home not support Spurs if you're a Spurs fan? Let me know. Kieran, thanks, mate, for your comments. Says, good afternoon. If we get Kudus and Simons, the sum will still be massive, so everyone keep their heads up. Yeah, Kudus and Simons. Undoubtedly talented players. But Simons, I like. He's obviously a bit diminutive, not very physical. He does look great when I see him play for the Netherlands, but would probably take some acclimatizing to the Premier League, I would have thought. But let's see. There were some reports that Newcastle were in for him as well, but they didn't want to join Newcastle. So let's see. Let's see what happens with that one. Again, you kind of almost wouldn't be surprised if another club came in for him, would you? Destiny Doggy, I'm sure it's the real one, says, love the shirt. Where did you get it? It's a TikTok special, Destiny. I found it on TikTok, got an advert for these kind of shirts sent to me, and I was hungover or drunk, and I was like, yes, please. And I think I paid about £14 for it. So try and find it. I can't remember what the page is called, though, I'm afraid. Frankie E feels very negative about things. Says bringing in Frank was just a part of Levy's scheme to not spend the money. Not sure about that. I'm really not sure about that, because let's face it, it's not been that long since, you know, we brought in Conte and Jose, and that wasn't a scheme to not spend money. So let's see. Ajax says Levy is a big dummy. JD McCall says nobody ever accused Levy of being self-aware. No, I don't think that's the case either. And O'Frere says they're relying on Thomas Frank being magic. And also Levy is really embarrassing. Not the first time that Levy has been called embarrassing tonight, or that people have said that they're embarrassed about Tottenham Hotspur at the moment. Dan says Chelsea are now in for Kudus and looking to hijack the deal. It's Willian all over again. Well, I've been saying on my videos for the last few days, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Chelsea did come in for Kudus at the last part. I would suggest to Tottenham, don't give him a medical unless you've already got the contract signed, because we did give Willian a medical, and then he just hopped over to Chelsea. Adam McFarlane, thanks for your comments. Says plan A, Eza. Plan B, Kudus. Get ready for plan C, Tyler Dibbling. Well, Tyler Dibbling has been on our list for a long time. He's a young, talented player. I don't think he's ready to be a Spurs forward who'll start regularly at the moment. But yeah, we may end up getting him in. Who knows? Lots of clubs interested in him, though. As if, thank you for your comment, mate. Says, we are the worst club in the so-called Big Six in the transfer market. We, 1, do not pay premium to get the best players. 2, wait out to lose players to other clubs. And 3, panic buy by overpaying. As if, I think that's a really good comment. And I can't fight you that hard on it, I'm afraid. That's, you know, just on our experience of the last few years. We have spent a lot of money. Like, we are third in the overall spending of since 2019 in the Premier League. But you're right in saying we don't pay premium, by which I would say in terms of the wages needing to get the best players. And so we do end up, you know, spending a lot of money on players who rarely make it. I'd say Dominic Solanke really is the only kind of proper player that we spent 60 odd million pounds on, 50 or 60 million pounds on, who's really worked out. Can you think of anyone else? All the rest of the players who become our best players, we kind of pay cheaper for. So Kulusevski and Bentancur, I'd say they've worked out, and we've only paid what, I think 30 million pounds most for them. And Gary agrees with me. Personally, I'm not convinced Kudus fits in with Thomas Frank's no dickheads policy. I agree. Daniel Levy's accountant says Locatelli. Well, Locatelli then, he was on the list of the guy who makes those videos for Tifo. They're called sensible Tottenham transfer or sensible transfers, and they do it for different clubs. And he suggested Locatelli would be a good signing for Spurs. But I mean, he is Italian, so you'd think that Don Fabio Paratici would be in for him. But let's see what happens. D-Merl says you sure handle the trolls smoothly. Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been kind of presenting stuff and making content for over 10 years, for about 10 years now on YouTube. And when you get as many trolls as I've had, you really learn to not care about it. I see people react on kind of Twitter and YouTube, especially kind of younger people who are kind of content creators, and they find it difficult to not take it very personally. And I think the way that I just deal with it is, you just know that if someone's slagging you off, then it comes from a place of envy. It comes from a place of, you know, I think even if it's a small part of them that they're not aware of, they would actually like to be talking about their football club and have an audience and debate it with their audience. Or do something in a similar kind of industry or in a similar way and earn money from it. And I think once you kind of realize that that's the case, then it's not really, you can't be angry at them. It's just like you kind of, yeah, It's just the way they do it. The Norwegian Viking says, great channel, by the way, one of my new favorites. I appreciate that, mate. Please spread the word. Really appreciate it. Oh, and Gary, after my question earlier asking where in California you are, you're from, you're in Newport Beach. Very nice. Newport Beach. I used to live in on and off in Los Angeles for a bit in Los Feliz. I love California. Seren, this is a good bit of positivity. Look on the positive side. From Thomas Frank's perspective, they're all new players. That is a really nice way of looking at it. And let's face it as well, when Thomas Frank comes in, I think most realistically, realistically, he'll probably be blown away by the standard in training, don't you think? I think he'll be like, oh, this standard is like better than the training sessions we had at Brentford. And maybe he just wants to see what that's going to look like before he kind of signs off on some players. Michael Walter says, can we really let Sonny go at this stage? I assume that's a question. I think it's got to be up to Sonny. If Sonny wants to come and play for Thomas Frank and put in another year and probably realistically not start every game and have his minutes rotated a bit, if he's happy to do that, then that's what'll happen. But if he wants a move and the money is right, then I think we'll all, say goodbye to Sonny with open arms. I think that's the wrong way of saying it, but with our blessing. He's been an amazing servant for Spurs, and we should build him a statue. Lee Haley, more positivity. I'm into this. I think Levy will back Thomas Frank. Early days, let's not panic. Yeah, I kind of think he will as well. But it's just that feeling of like, are we going to miss out on the best players we could have got? That's all. That's the only worry, I think. Adam McFarlane says, sell Sonny, QT, Richarlison, and Solomon. All right, let's say they do that. And I guess we're assuming in that instance that QT really insisted on leaving. Then let's say we would get, I'll say in a kind of my most conservative estimate, 30. Let's say we get 30 for Sonny, 30 million for Sonny, 55 million for QT. So what's that? 85 million. 25 for Rishi. So that's 95, 105, 110 million, and 15 for Solomon. So what's that? About 130 million that we'd have on top of whatever our budget is to spend. Now, that's a lot of money, but also realistically, you could say that you're losing two guaranteed first team players there in Sonny and QT. And realistically, to get a kind of equivalent first team player, you're having to pay 60 million. So you would be selling 4 to then get 2 first team replacements of 60 million each, basically, and you'd have 10 million pounds left over. So I don't know, not sure how good a deal that would be, but yeah, let's see what happens. Rene says, last season, Brentford's wages were 33 million and Spurs is 96 million. I can see why Levy went for Frank. I think that's not the reason, personally. I think it's probably not miles away from a reason in terms of overperformance. He wanted a manager who had the opportunity, not the opportunity, but had the skills to overperform the wage numbers for sure. But I think he also liked, his ability to communicate and his ability to beat the big teams with lesser players. So I'm just looking here. Apparently, Man United, Man City, and Real Madrid are all tracking Benjamin Cesco's situation in case Arsenal fail to get a deal done. So even that is not sure, although some reports that Arsenal are getting closer to Victor Gyökeres. Darren Kilban, thank you for your comment, mate. Says Levy is a pain in the ass to both players and agents. Why do we find it difficult? It's why we find it difficult to get players in or out. Yeah, listen, I think the reality is, you hear enough reports from over the years and all around the world, and the different clubs and Alex Ferguson and everyone to say that is an understatement. And then Adam actually adds, and this is a good point, Basuma will go as well. I think Frank will want to have a look at Basuma though, and he's a good example of one of those Spurs players who I think Frank will want to have a proper chat with. Like, do you want to play for Tottenham? Do you feel like, with 1 year left on your deal, that this is the place for you in the long term? Because if it's not, then we're going to let you go. And for me, with Basuma, he's such a gifted player, but it's about his concentration. Is he able to concentrate for 95 minutes every single game, every single week? That's the way I feel about this. Adam thinks Basuma will go to Turkey and will go for Jacob Ramsey from Aston Villa. He's been on our list for a while, doesn't he? Here's an interesting one from Shadow saying, does he actually solve anything for Arsenal currently? Odegaard had a bad season, but can't see Arteta dropping him. I don't think Eberechi Eze is only a number 10. He's kind of like an 8-10, or he can play wide left. So I'm only saying that. I'm not bothered by what happens at Woolwich, but when I see some people say, "Oh, why would Spurs go for Eze? What, to replace Maddison?" I don't think we can think like that anymore. I think we need to have a deeper squad, and where players like Eze are also able to play in a number of different positions, that really helps too. And that's why I think, him and Kudus as an example, and Semenyo before he signed his new deal, would have been really good options. Liston, thank you for your comment, mate. Says, one must wonder if Levy is even aware of how much business other clubs are doing in this window. I mean, I'm sure he's aware, but I doubt he cares. He's so single-minded and only cares about what's happening right in front of him at his own club, and trying to, make sure the books are clean and they all work out. Mark Field makes a good point. I don't want any player who doesn't want to play for us. Yeah, great point, Mark. Ped has sent me a super chat. Appreciate that, Ped. Thank you. Don't know if you just didn't write anything there on purpose or accidentally, but I appreciate it. Thank you. Let's see what else we've got here. Daniel Levy's account says Bergvall had interest from Barcelona, still chose us. Yeah, but that was in the Ange Postecoglou days where he just got on the phone and persuaded players. I do wonder if we're missing that, although I was listening to the Extra Inch earlier, and I think it was Nathan and Bardi on the Extra Inch podcast, which you should listen to, by the way. They were saying that's rubbish. Ben Webber, thank you for your comment, mate. Win the league and Champions League and make almost no signings, great. Yeah, I was talking about that earlier. I do think it's ridiculous that Levy said that out loud and let that video go out with him saying that without realizing that he would then have to spend absolutely loads of money to even have a chance of winning anything like that. Charlotte, thank you for your comment. Charlotte says, at the moment, Barnaby Champions League entry is pointless like the last time. The modern day transfer market is completely passed Levy by. I know what you're saying, Charlotte. I don't think it's pointless. Of course, it's not pointless, because you've got to get in the Champions League to earn the Champions League money, let alone being with a chance of potentially, going deep into the tournament. But I understand the sentiment for sure. It does feel like just Tottenham are acting on a different plane to the Chelsea are the best example. They just finding ways to spend money. It's completely mad that the Premier League have just let themselves get mugged off by Chelsea, and the loopholes and stuff. And I can only hope that at some point, kind of OJ Simpson style, it comes back to bite them, where basically what happened with OJ Simpson is he was cleared of murder, even though he definitely murdered the two people. And then many years later, he was arrested on basically a misdemeanor felony in a different state. But the judge when he was found guilty, gave him like a 33-year sentence, the absolute massive, most high sentence he could be given for that misdemeanor felony, which was basically just stealing back some old sports merchandise of his. And he was sent to jail for 33 years. And I think he had to do at least 10, 12 years of that or something anyway. And that was all basically karma, because the judge was like, you should have been jailed for life for the murders. Couldn't say that out loud, but that was clear what that was all about. And I hope that at some point Chelsea will be found, well, they've admitted guilt for another break of the rules from back in the day when Abramovich was chairman. And I can only hope that the Premier League find a way to throw the book at them for that, as kind of like a way of properly punishing them for what they should be punished for, which is, the embarrassing sale of their hotel and women's team to themselves. Just an absolute piss take. Lee Haley being very confident here. 9 points first 3 games. Oof, well, I hope so. I fear not, but I hope so. Adam says, personally, I would like to keep Solomon. I like his pace and unpredictability. Aaron Lennon Mark too. It's interesting with Solomon, isn't it? Manuel Solomon. Because he did play in those early games under Ange Postecoglou before he got injured. And he set up a couple of goals, I remember, away at Burnley for Sonny. Maybe one for Sonny, one for Maddison. And, he did always look bright, but for some reason, he just never seemed to be rated. And then maybe, I think, he was injured for most of that first season. And then I think they sent him on loan really to see how he bounced back from his injury. But he really ripped it up in the Championship for Leeds. Who knows? I mean, I think Tottenham will just see him as pure profit because we got him on a free. I'm not afraid to say it, we're a little underhand with that. Shakhtar Donetsk, all the contracts of players in the Ukraine got ripped up because of the war, and Spurs bought him for free because he didn't have a contract with them, and they said Shakhtar Donetsk will give you a friendly, and their chairman went absolutely mental about it. But as a result, it would be pure profit for Daniel Levy, and so maybe he is tempted to sell him on. But let's see what happens. Yeah, maybe Solomon will impress Thomas Frank. You just don't know. Like I said, Thomas Frank will improve players. He's a really good coach who will improve players on the pitch, and so who knows. Carey, American here. Why does West Ham hate us more than Arsenal or Chelsea? Yeah, I don't really get it. I think there's, for years and on, back to, the 70s, there's been stuff between the two firms of West Ham and Tottenham, as in the kind of back in the days, the fans who were hooligans and they used to organise fights before the games and stuff. And then in the early noughties, Spurs bought a lot of West Ham's players. But I don't really know why West Ham hate us so much. No idea, really. I guess it's probably down to the firms or whatever. Anthony Rose, I agree with this. Spurs need a monster six for any attackers. Yeah, they're just few and far between, though, aren't they, Anthony? JR Martinez says, I've given up my expectations on this window already with Spurs. Just keep missing out on player after player. I'm tired of it. No idea what to do or where to go from here. I think it'll end up being all right, but we are going to just have to put our fists in our mouths and just try and deal with it for a while. I think we're going to have to be patient. What would help actually is if Thomas Frank came out maybe in one of his early interviews in preseason and said, look, I'm calm about it. We've got a list of players we're interested in. We're just kind of waiting until the clubs are ready. I mean, don't forget, when it comes to transfer deals, it's not these days as simple as just buying a player. You often have to wait for that club who is selling the player to replace that player. And it's almost like buying a house with like a, why can't I think of the word? A queue? Is it called a queue? A chain. It's like buying a house where there's a chain. So, I don't doubt that we're doing our business and we're doing our due diligence, but it is frustrating. That's for sure. That's for sure. Okay. Ben Webber, thanks for your comment, mate. Says, you'd think finishing 17th in the league and being in the Champions League would scare them into action rather than inactivity. Good point, mate. What I would say is, do you remember last time we got into the Champions League, Conte, do you remember that period? Conte was basically saying, I'm not sure if I'm going to stay at Spurs unless they do business early. And that was when ENIC suddenly did like a bond issue and got £150 million out. And then Spurs bought Perisic early on in the window and maybe one other, I can't remember who. Conte put them under real pressure that window and they actually responded. But obviously, there was no manager at the beginning of this window and Thomas Frank's not going to go in there and put them under pressure straight away. So Levy is able to be a bit more patient, and he loves, let's face it, he loves the transfer window and he loves to let it kind of go as long as possible without buying anyone, because he knows that the transfer, the prices come down the further down the line you go. Carlson says, I think it's worrying that we're so slow in the window. We just focus on one player at a time. What are we doing? Well, that's interesting, though, isn't it? Because when Fabio Paratici was officially our sporting director, it was never a matter of just one player at a time. He had 20 plates spinning all at once. So it'll be interesting to see whether Paratici comes back in. Matt Richardson, thanks for your comment, mate. Says, Barnaby, do you think we will do anything this window? I'm already having my doubts. After his interview, Levy is looking a right fool now. I think we will, mate, but I just think we're going to have to be a bit more patient. Gary Paulsby says, Barnaby, love your great content. Keep it going. We are skint. ENIC and Levy have spent our budget on the building of the hotel and apartments. It's going ahead now instead. ENIC out. Thanks for your comment, mate. I appreciate that. I don't fully agree. The hotel and the apartments, that will not be ENIC's money. That will be done more in loans again. So that won't affect the first team. There's no way it will. And that is part, I'm afraid to say it, you may not want to hear it, but that is part of the Northumberland development project that ENIC and the club put into. They started that project back 20 years ago to regenerate the area, build the stadium, regenerate the area, and those hotels, that hotel and those flats. If you go to the Emirates Stadium, it is surrounded by new build flats, and Arsenal made so much money out of that, literally surrounded all the way around it. And that was a very clever revenue stream by then. So I don't look at that badly, I'm afraid. But thank you so much for your comment. I appreciate it. Sam asks, what are your thoughts on Harvey Elliott? He reminds me of a young Frank Lampard. I like him. He's strong and powerful. He's not that big. I see him as more of a wide man than Frank Lampard, but yeah, I do rate him. I do like him. Simon Cohen says, hi, Barnaby, Spurs should try for Edison and Lookman from Atalanta. Edison has been on Tottenham's list for quite a while, but he's on lots of clubs' lists, Man United and a fair few others as well. I would be very surprised if we got Edison. But let's see what happens. Wolf Mauler says, players got to be pretty turned off by what seems a lack of ambition in the wake of the Europa League win. Yeah, possibly. I mean, they were certainly seemingly annoyed about Ange getting the heave-ho, weren't they? Sam likes the thoughts of Kudus, Elliott and Simons behind Solanke. I think one thing that will be interesting with Thomas Frank is that whereas Ange liked his wingers to kind of, he liked Johnson on the right to go on the outside on his right foot. I think Thomas Frank prefers to have kind of inverted wingers with a left footer on the right and a right footer on the left. I think Pochettino, if memory serves, was more into that. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes our style. And I guess people will... it'll be interesting to see how the players react to that. Okay, a report coming out now that I'm seeing saying yesterday, Daniel Levy offered Christian Romero the chance to become the highest paid player at the club. Romero responded gracefully. I think I've just realized reading that tweet that it's probably bullshit. But who knows? You never know with these ITKs, but I think it's probably bullshit. So excuse me for reading that out live. That's a mistake I made. Let's see what else we got in the comments here. Gary Riddell, nice positivity. All this moaning, we have the best stadium. Didn't we just win a cup? Yeah, exactly. We are Europa League champions. We're in the European Super Cup final. Never did I think that would happen. So I'm not going to whinge too much about that. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. Price, thank you for your comment. Says, Kudus improves us, but I have a sick feeling that Chelsea and Newcastle swoop in and we end up with nothing. I don't think he'll go to Newcastle. I think that's unlikely, but yeah, Chelsea may well do. Tony Frost says, we struggle to sell because we shop for deals instead of what we need, like going into Lidl for a salad bag and buying a screwdriver instead. Yeah, really good point. And PKD81, I have a bit of a fear about this. Eza was going to be our next superstar. Kudus is going to be our next Ndombele. Yeah, I have a bit of a fear about that. Matt Richardson, yep, completely agree. It's a joke. Chelsea can apparently just buy who they want with no repercussions. They've got to be punished at some point. They do. HodGod10, thank you for your comment. And another regular. Just fed up with the lack of activity in the transfer market and the lack of communication. I have no idea where we are going. Well, I guess that the club would say, Vinay and Levy only did that interview a week or two ago, so we have communicated. But yeah, it has all gone quiet. I think let's just hope that that something big happens soon. Spurs related says, big up, mate. Good to see you back active consistently. Bring back Spurred on. Yeah, well, listen, if the company who owns Spurred on wanted to bring it back, then feel free to get in touch. But they invested a lot of money in it and didn't make it back, so they weren't delighted. Forever Together saying, Sonny will never go to Saudi Arabia. No other team can offer enough money to satisfy Levy's greed. Okay, well, let's keep him then. I'm happy to keep him. Very happy to keep him. Alan Glauber says, if Daniel Levy chased away the Qataris, I say good for him. All right, good. Listen, I think it is really important to be honest with your feelings about it. And a lot of fans do not want Spurs to be owned by a nation state. And I can totally understand why, especially those kind of states with questionable human rights and stuff like that. So totally understandable. I agree, actually. I'm a bit torn because there's obviously a part of probably all of us that says, what are our chances unless we join the other clubs in doing the same? But also, if we were to win one of the two big ones, having been built up sustainably, it would be the sweetest of feelings. The sweetest of feelings. Sai's going to go well, losing it a little bit. Everyone else has made signings. We are finished. Yeah, this is a good point. If Arsenal buy Noni, I fear Chelsea will steal Kudus. Yeah, Noni Madueke is being is on Arsenal's list, and Arsenal and Chelsea love to do business together, don't they? Noni Madueke used to be in Spurs' academy. Deary me. Iland Every Q says, we signed Tell, so now we won't sign Eza and we won't sign Kudus, but we'll go for Dibbling. No ambition. I mean, I can't say for sure that you're wrong, but who knows? Gary with a little bit more positivity again. All the moaning about our crap signings, QT, Van der Ven, Poro, Destiny, all the promising kids, Kulu, Sonia. I agree. We've got a lot of very, very good talent. And let's hope that Thomas Frank gets off to a good start. And then I'm positive that a lot of that talent can really grow into absolutely amazing players. All right, guys, listen, I've really enjoyed this this live stream, and thank you so much for being a part of it. Please do press like on YouTube. Please do subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber for regular live streams about all things Tottenham during this transfer window, and of course daily transfer videos. I will be doing a video tomorrow morning with the latest Tottenham transfer rumours, but also a little bit more about that story coming out in the last 48 hours that the Qataris were very serious about trying to buy 100% of Tottenham Hotspur, but their dealings with Daniel Levy made them walk away from the deal. Thank you so much, guys, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night. Come on, you Spurs.